This is the Course of Action podcast, available on Apple, Spotify, Good Pods, and your favorite platform worldwide. You can also stream new episodes on the Reeves Across America radio network every Monday at noon Eastern. Reeves Across America's mission is to remember the fallen, honor those who serve, and teach future generations the value of freedom. All right, guys, I got a former spy and a very experienced podcaster here in the house. Over 2,000 episodes. Is that right, Pete?
That's right, 2000. Crazy.
2,000. Pete Turner is here from the Break It Down show. Pete, how are you doing, man?
Hey, man, I'm great. Thanks for having me on your show. You know, it's super cool to be on somebody else's show because I know what goes into doing anything. And so
Right.
I appreciate, I like more than people can understand. I appreciate what it means to do what you do and to let me on your show. That's so huge. Thank you. Really, seriously, thank
Of
you.
course, yes, it's great, and I love your show. I follow it on. I think it's either Spotify or Apple, whichever one.
Yeah, yeah,
I have a horrible tendency of listening to different shows on different platforms and not staying like consistent.
sure.
And I think it's just because whatever app I happen to pop up or anything. So I have all these different shows across all these platforms that I follow, and I need to get them all on one or something. But I know how the algorithms work, so I guess it's not bad to bounce around either. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And honestly, I quit publishing on podcast platforms because it was a cost center for my business. And so I leaned out and put that money into PR. And so now if you want to listen, it's got to be Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter or X. Because, you know, I had to minimize where I spent money. And for me, discovery is the biggest thing that I have to invest in right now. So
yeah.
even then, if you want to listen on Apple Podcast or Google Play or you're not going to find me anymore. Not the new stuff, at least.
Yeah, I do really well on YouTube because I've kind of figured out how to utilize the algorithms and the SEO and the YouTube Shorts. So now I'm doing better on YouTube than I am on any other platform. So I push it to everything, but
Sure.
I definitely give YouTube a little more attention because it's the difference in thousands of views. So you got to run with
It,
it.
yeah, you do. You do. Yeah, it's funny with the YouTube thing too because they'll change their mind and you're like, what happened? You know, it's just some crazy fight. But yeah, it's that algorithm, that dragon, right? I tell people all the time, like it's not what you think you need to do. It's you've got to satisfy the computer, and if they don't tell you what the game is, and then once you realize the game, you're like, well, that's not what I'm that's not why I'm here. I'm not
Yeah.
here to do that thing, you know.
Yeah.
And so you've got to make this balance between what you want to create and the direction you think you're going versus what they'd like you to do. Because I'll tell you right now, if you want to create a very banal reaction channel or a gear analysis channel, yeah, you'll go right to the top, maybe. But if you want to create something original, they don't understand how to deal with that.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't. They want people on the platform watching just to be on the platform because that's what's paying the bills. They're not overly
Yeah,
concerned with the content, and I think sometimes that's frustrating because it's like this is good stuff, but people aren't able to see it and hear it without me dumping hundreds of dollars into
oh my God.
advertising to try to get them
Yes.
to do it. That's why I
Yeah.
switched over to Spotify because Spotify's free. You can post it to Spotify for free and
Yeah.
it still goes out to a bunch of different channels and Spotify pushes it a little harder because you're using their platform because I
Yeah.
was using Buzzsprout and paying for it every month and that was great, but it was costing me. And a lot of
Yeah.
podcasts do not make money like these big ones like Joe Rogan and all them do.
Oh man.
Um,
Yeah.
we're not raking in the cash.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And my
Yeah.
time and all that, like
Oh my gosh.
it means a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. Shorts sound easy until you have to start creating them and publishing them, and it costs all of it costs a lot of money and a lot of time. It really
Yeah.
does.
I
And again,
found
that's why I
this,
appreciate being on your show because I know what it takes to exist.
yes,
It's
it
so
takes a
much
lot.
work.
I found
Yeah.
this caption app that I paid for. It was like $60 for the year. And it'll do captions for you for like long videos or for short clips and all that. But then it has this new feature on there where you can just copy and paste a YouTube URL and then it'll go through and it'll cut 5 or 6 clips.
Oh, that's
AI will
cool.
use it, cut 5 or 6 shorts clips that they say will rank best on shorts views. and then it does the captions for you. So I found that little things like that, automating processes, has helped cut time down and try
Yeah.
to get a little more content out there, because I think that's the, you can publish an episode a week and you can put the long form episode out there, and it'll do
Yeah.
whatever it does, but
Yeah.
that's not it. People's attention spans are so short that
Yeah.
they want that instant gratification. You have to put those short little clips and stuff out there, or people just
It's
they
true.
just won't tune in.
It's It's true. And the other thing I would say to all of that is if you uh, give in to that, then you sacrifice potentially bigger things, and so you have this long form show, and maybe it does well, maybe it doesn't. Maybe this episode just tanks and nobody cares about Pete A. Turner or whatever. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have value. And so what I've learned through my experience on the show is that you have to follow your nose and screw the audience. They're not in charge. You're in charge.
Hmm.
And I know where there's good things. I don't hit 100%, but I know where there's good things, and that turns in. And this is all related to my spy work too, by the way. And so, as long as I continue to put value in the show will create value for me, and that will create value for everybody else. And so, like knowing you, knowing Gavin, who connected us, all is value, 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 value. And so, whether or not the audience, I don't care if one person watches my episode that I do with you, what matters to me is that I'm supporting you, you supporting me. I know you, I know how I can help you, you know how you can help me. And within that, there's opportunity. And times that by 1,000. And all of a sudden there's opportunity all around. Too many people are focused on how do I monetize? Well, you have to have something valuable. The Break It
Yeah.
Down show, my show, and I'm not trying to plug my show right now, it is so you can't even comprehend how valuable it is. All of my friends I've met because of my show, the enormously successful people, the people whose ear I can bend, who want to bend my, oh my God. And so, yeah, I don't have Joe Rogan's fame and fortune, but boy, oh boy, do I have a powerful, financially powerful opportunity machine that I've built. And that's what folks can't lose sight of. Like you're investing your time and effort and energy into that. And so maybe as an audience there, maybe not. But if you're creating value, you have something valuable.
Yeah, I agree. I think the biggest kind of like return on investment for me with this has been the connections and getting to
Yeah.
know people, because now I have cell phone numbers and emails from people, and I've reached out to them and said, "Hey, what do you think of this? Hey, would you read some pages from an upcoming project I'm working on?"
Right.
I met my editor through doing a lot of this stuff. Now I know
Yeah.
a bunch of publicists from the big publishing
Boy.
houses, and now they're like, this year's been different.
See?
Now they're
Yeah.
emailing me and saying, "Hey, man, I got a new book coming out from this guy. Can we
Yep.
get him on the show? Can I get your address to send you a book?" I'm not having to ask as much anymore. Like, they're
Right.
reaching out to me, which makes booking guests a little easier and
Yeah.
getting content a
Yeah.
little easier. So those dividends pay off. And I don't really care at the end of the day how many clicks that I get. Um,
Right.
I'm more worried about, like, I'm having a guest on. What am I doing for you? How am I using my platform to help you out? Are you gaining
Right.
new viewers on a Break It Down show because of
Right.
Course of Action? So
Yeah.
I'm more worried about that and giving back to the community and promoting a veteran's business, talking to
Yep.
people like you who've been in the
Sure.
agency and around
Yeah.
intelligence work, and
Yeah.
getting to tell your story, because sometimes you don't get to do that.
Yeah.
But
No,
try to keep that
it's
under wraps.
yeah, yeah, and especially guys in my field in counterintelligence, we're always like, oh, I can't talk about it. I dig those. I'm gonna say fuckers. I dig those fuckers out, and I'm like, hey man, you've got to tell your story. Quit
Yes.
acting like it's a big secret because there's too many people already doing it. There's too many people who don't know our work that are telling our stories. And get up. So I totally agree with that. There's value in doing all that. By the way, I'm not an agency guy. I'm an Army guy. So Army counterintelligence, just so everybody knows. And there's so much truth in what you're talking about. And just like, I'm going to focus on this. And even if you and I accomplish very little today, it's a base hit up the middle. And maybe it's a 20 hopper that goes right under the shortstop's glove. It's an at bat, it's a base hit, and then we go forward from there. And who knows what happens as long as there's just opportunity, and that's I think the key with all of these shows. And no matter what happens, like once you get past the tenth episode, the 50th episode, the 250th episode, and people start calling you and you look way up on Podcast Mountain, you're way up there. Sure, Joe Rogan's sitting at the top. He's the old man with the beard, and you're never going to get up there. But he was famous to start with, and he
Yeah.
had to jump on everybody. Who cares about that? What matters is like my show is one of the greatest shows of all time. Like it literally legitimately is. But there's still like this stratification where like there's my show, and there's still like wow,
Hmm.
like way higher. But that doesn't mean that there's not tremendous value in what you do and what I do, and to get up to where we're at, like we're incredible with our level of success and what folks don't see. And like oftentimes I'll be on X and someone will say, "Oh, this guy's," like they'll mock me and say, "Oh, this guy's got a podcast," and I'm like, "Oh, if you only knew." Like you see that I have a show in my bio, and then you don't even look and realize like you had any idea, the monster that you just made fun of and how big and how successful and all the famous people. Oh my God. Like you would never mock it because you would look like a fool for pointing out my show and be like, "Oh, this guy's got a podcast." Like you're a precious little baby and you don't know what you're talking about. Just go away and don't make fun of something because what you've done is it's a miracle. And the other thing I was going to say was it is amazing to pick a group or groups of people like veterans or whatever. And like no matter what, if a veteran comes knocking, I'm going to do my absolute best to support them. I'm going to
Hmm.
absolutely try to say yes every single time. I can't always do it, but it's by exception when I don't. There's something that doesn't jive with me or whatever, and so I love being able to do that. And it's just again, it's service to our community and it's service to what we do. And I'm not like the biggest like veteran rah guy. I don't have like a like "don't step on me" kind of shirt. That's not
Yeah.
my thing.
You're
But
not wearing the hat.
I don't have one. I don't have one. It's not my style. But because that wasn't my thing. Even when I was in the army, I was the guy that went to a unit and helped them, and then I left. I was never like the unit guy. Um, but still, it doesn't mean that I don't love veterans and try to help them out. There's a guy I've just been connected to this weekend, trying to help him get connected to resources because he's struggling, and I get it. And so that's where I come in, and I'm like, I get you. I've been shot at. You're not going to be able to out horrible me. I get all of it, and if I can, I help those folks.
Yeah, I like to have um, fellow vets on as often as I can, and it just so happens that a lot of them are authors or entrepreneurs,
Sure.
and I'm seeing them on social media, and I saw a guy by the name of Chatham Love with Gila, it's Gila Conceal. He's got this camouflage that he's been developing, and
Yeah.
former Marine. He's got like he's going to school to be a rocket scientist. Literally is like a rocket nerd, and I say
Yeah.
that nice. So if he's listening, I want him to know that I'm saying that as a compliment. Super smart guy. Has
Yeah.
designed his own camouflage for like hunting
Dang.
applications, and I was interested in him because I saw him on Instagram literally lay down a shirt in the woods and walk away from it, and it blended right in. I said, "There's no freaking way that's real. There's no way." I immediately messaged him and said, "Dude, I need to know more. Where can I find more?" I bought a hoodie
Right.
from him. I had him on the show, and I was like, "How the heck are you doing this? Like, how did you
Yeah.
come up with a camo?" Like, it was just the fact that we had that conversation, and he got to talk more about his business. Worst case scenario, nobody listens to it, but he got a whole lot of practice talking about
Boy.
his trade. So the
Yeah.
next guy he runs
Yeah.
across who says, "I love it, I want to build it, I want to do it with you," he's got the
Right.
elevator pitch already worked down and can just
Yeah.
blurt it out. And I'm like, worst
Yeah.
case scenario, I bought a hoodie from him and he got some practice and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Money well
Yeah. And
spent.
it's funny too because you'll do that for somebody. I've done that for people, and I'll say, "You go through the show and you pick out the clips you want, I will make them for you." Right. And as a norm, as the vast majority of the time, person doesn't do it. I will go give you this work. This is marketing work. All you got to do is log your own show. And the person doesn't do it. And I'm like, all right, cool. But like, that's the other thing. Like, people have when you're coming up and someone gives you money, that's thousands of dollars of work right there.
Mm-hmm.
Thousands. And people like I'm talking to the audience right now. If you're in that position and someone gives you that opportunity out of the goodness of their heart, invest in yourself and say, all right, and go get over whatever time, whatever barrier, whatever fear, and go sit down and log that, do that, whatever that thing is, do it and go, all right, Here it is. These are the clips I want. These 10 clips. I will take the time. Jeff will take that and we'll do it. Do that work. Challenge that person. When someone sits down and says, how can I help you? Tell them clearly what you want for help and don't just make it money. I could use your mentoring. I could use, would you sit with me once a week or once every other week for an hour? Take me out to lunch and guide me on this. Ask specifically for what you want. People are desperate to help. Just let them. Let them. By the way, you mentioned something earlier I wanted to go back to. When I was listening to some of your other episodes, you talked about how like you found the right editor and unlocked your writing in a way that launched you forward. And that's the other thing this show provides is like you find these people who are like experts that are 2 steps ahead of where you need to be, and they can pull you forward, and you're like, oh my god,
Yeah.
and it's there's all that support is around when you have a show like this where you can go, I'm curious about this thing. And you can reach into the world of experts and go, would you talk to me? And they're like, you're asking me, world famous expert on this topic, if I want to talk about what I'm world famous about? Oh, hell yeah. And then they
Yeah.
come on your show and you're like, I'm having my mind blown by a person talking about quantum gravity. And it's an amazing opportunity just to talk about show stuff for a second. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an incredible adventure.
Well, I think you got to be a student. While you're being the teacher, you also have to be a student because you're on a platform like this. Somebody listening is listening to you as a teacher, but at the same time, I'm also listening to other podcasts and saying, how did they do that? What did he
Right,
do? How is he
right.
marketing? How is he doing his clips? What kind of
Yeah.
guests is he having? Is what kind of questions is he asking them to get that engagement? What's interesting? Like, and then in my
Yeah.
writing, of course, I'm always reading and asking other authors like, how did you do that? What is important
Right.
to you to get out of a character? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm always being a student. And that's how if you would have read my first like work of fiction years ago that was never published, it's absolute garbage. But
Yeah.
it, it set the tone and built a platform, built that baseline. And then as I've learned things, I've been like, oh, I screwed up this, I screwed up that. It would have worked. It would have been horrible. It would have been a
Hmm.
train wreck. But where I'm at now is totally different. And now I'm connected to the people who are like, hey, let me really help you. Let me give you the no joke behind the scenes of the curtains, of
Yep.
publishing and tell you what to do to get those words right. Where when somebody reads it for the first time, they're gonna go, ooh, we gotta have this. Because they
Yeah.
tell you, well,
Yeah.
your first 50 pages, your first 10 pages are super important. But as a writer, you go, well, I might not reveal nothing in my first 10 pages. Like the purpose is to drag it on and get people to suck it up and read the whole 400 pages. So you don't want to give away
Yeah.
the store in the first 10 pages, but that's exactly what an agent wants to see.
Yeah.
You have to hook them in that first 10 pages to where they go, I don't need to read the other 390 pages. I know what I need to know out of that first 10, and I got to have this. I'll read the rest later, and we'll get contracts and blah, 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 all the business side, but you got to
Yeah.
hook them in that first 10 pages. That's a hard
Yeah.
thing to do. You got to learn it.
Well, and there's a difference between like beginner and pro, and
Big
you're
difference.
talking about that very thing where a beginner is like, "Ooh, I don't want to give away the store," and the pro is like, "There's plenty of stuff. Like, don't worry about ideas. I have ideas aplenty. I'm not going to run out of ideas. So here, bam, here's the hook. You think I'm going to run out of hooks? You think I'm going to run out of twists? This is nothing. This is I got you.
Yeah.
Just hang on, and that's that difference. It's like when someone says, "Oh, but I got writer's block," and I'm like, "Listen, kid, no matter if they're older than me or not, like writer's block. Here's how you beat writer's block. First off, you act like a pro. Second, you put down 4 projects in front of you. You work on one. Can you write one word? Okay, great. Can you write 10? Okay, great. Can you write 100? No, you get stuck at 100. Okay, go to the next project. Write a sentence. Write 10 words. Can you write 100? Good. And then you go to the next project and you just work and you don't stop working. So you're not blocked. You're just constantly iterating to the next project. And the next thing you know, you have written 500 words and you go, good enough for today, you know? And then when you get cooking, you're cooking and you're not blocked anymore. So, like writer's block, you just get that out of the way. Look, some people are smashed by writer's block. They usually don't become writers, right? And so maybe that is your thing, but
Hmm.
there are ways around it. But you have to be a pro.
Well, and I've met so many authors that were like, I have some books that I wrote 300,000 words for a
Yeah,
100,000 word book. And they said, I've scrapped so much of it because it wasn't the point of did I write the exact 100,000 words I needed or did I
right.
get to the exact 100,000 words I need.
Right.
And that's what
Right.
you can
Yeah.
always have less out of more, but you can't have more out of less. That's
Yeah.
hard.
Right. Yeah.
So I realized the value in doing that. Like, oh, I just need to write. Even if
Yeah.
I have writer's block, I just need to write. And maybe it's
Yeah.
crap, but it's not the point. The point
Yeah.
is moving past and keeping the
Yep.
mind working and using it as a mental exercise because that's that's really important. And um, I think that's important in your arena because you've got over 2,000 episodes. I want to talk to you
Yeah.
about how you got into podcasting. And 2,000
Sure.
episodes is amazing. Some people don't even make it to 100. What
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
was the idea behind starting podcasting for you?
When I came back from Afghanistan after a lot of time in combat, I'm like, I'm going to do my best to not go. And I wasn't sure I had actually quit. And it appears that I have, but I wasn't sure at the time. And so I'm like, I got to tell some of these stories. I've got so many stories. I met so many amazing characters. I just want to get these out of me. And there's a guy from my hometown that happened to have this little community radio show. And so he invited me on. And I'm like, oh, cool. This is like an in for me to maybe get into this because I was just trying to figure out how to do that, because I don't you got to keep in mind, I don't know anybody. I mean, I know tons of people, but I don't know anybody in that world.
Right.
And so um, we vibe, we're friends, and we just have a good energy. And he's like, man, you come back anytime you want. And I'll be back next week. You're not getting rid of me. And shortly after that, shortly after, like a couple months later, the station's community radio station, like, hey, you guys are too big for us. You can't come back. If you're going to put someone else in that chair, you got to go do something bigger. And so they gave us the creative impetus. Like, this is all healthy. Like, this wasn't like we were being bad. They're like, no, 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 you go do something bigger. And so we cooked up the podcast. This is, it's over 10 years ago now. And we listened to a bunch of podcasts. We listened to Jay Moore, who ultimately became our friend. He's a really good friend of mine now. We listened to Mick Betancourt when he had his show, and just a bunch of Joe Rogan. We listened to a bunch of people, and we kind of figured out what we wanted to do within that world. And that's when the Break It Down show. I remember where we were specifically when we named the Break It Down show. I mean, we were in San Francisco doing odd jobs, he and I, and yeah, and so we started, and we were able to keep going. And John Leon Guerrero is my partner in this. It's my show now because he's not moved on, but he does other things in addition to it. So he comes on the show when he can. But um, we just kept going, and it turned out that I had more passion, I had more time, I had more ability to stick with it. But it's been a ridiculous ride. 2,000 episodes is ridiculous.
It's crazy.
It really
It's
is.
absolutely crazy. Now, how does it feel now today being a podcast host? You're working on bigger projects, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit.
Sure.
But being Army counterintelligence, you said, and
Yeah.
then being a podcast host, there a big difference? Is there a big
No.
connection?
It's the same. It's the same job, honestly. Like that, look, there's obviously differences, but that Venn diagram is just a big circle. It's not two circles. It's just differences by degree. I'm still networking, which is a big part of counterintelligence. I'm still doing interviews, and like the show is a field report. It's the same thing. My ability to ask the right question is on display all the time, and so I'm just out there and I'm learning about things and trying to figure out like what is the information requirement, and I'm just answering them over and over and over again. And people recognize that I'm doing that, and then they give me taskings. And this is like where you were saying, like they are like, hey Pete, can so and so come on your show? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it, or whatever. And so it's honestly, a lot of it is the same exact job, which is kind of crazy. And I'm highly skilled at counterintelligence, so it works out and it makes sense that I would leverage these skills, to go out and become a great podcaster. Yeah. So that's sort of it. It is amazing. I mean, like, being a spy is really the way I do it. It's part reporter, it's part marketer, it's part sales guy.
Yeah.
Like it's all these jobs, all these skills. It's like, especially the sales side of it. Like, you become a good salesperson because you have to, and so all of these jobs are kin to also I found out from talking to this mentalist that I've met this year, Michael, or last year, Michael Gutenplan. It's like, I'm a mentalist. He's like, yeah, we have the same job. I've trained CIA people, and I'm like, holy shit, no kidding. And so it turns out I also have mentalist skills in my bag of tricks. I didn't know that until he started explaining it to me, and I was explaining to him like the things that he had that were even more spy related than he realized. And so all of these things all go together in the same big bucket. But you would never know that if you had never been a spy or a podcaster and talked to mentalists before.
What's it like from podcast episode 1 to 2000? Where has the evolution kind of taken you?
Uh, my feelings don't get hurt hardly at all anymore. You know, the I don't have to worry as much. I used to be very panicky about like, are the shows going to get booked? The show largely books itself now. If I want to book somebody, I can. I don't have to worry about that. I can take big cracks at big guests, and I do sometimes. But it's just there's enough stuff out there, and there's enough yeses out there that I barely worry about it. And actually, almost to my detriment, I should be trying for bigger, harder work guests because I can get them. But my work is in other places now, which we'll probably talk about later, and so I don't hunt as hard as I used to.
Hmm.
That's definitely a big difference. And the other thing I would say is like, one of the things, there's two things that I do that are really different than a lot of shows is I bring in either co-guests or co-hosts to create a dynamic. Sometimes it's just me. If I do
Thought about
that.
doing that
Um,
too.
yeah, you should. It's a neat dynamic because it creates a healthy conversation. So, like a friend of mine, he's a retiring, but he's an army guy, and one of his jobs up north in Washington is he's a liaison between the tribes and the Army Corps of Engineers. So you got to imagine like they're working on a dam or whatever it's going to be, and so he's talking to the Sioux, the whatever, right? And so it's all these different entities and then how they govern. And it just blows your mind when you realize the complexity of something. Like, no, we're just going to build a dam. You're an engineer. Like, I need 5,000 bags of concrete. I need some pipe, and it's like, no, 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 no. This is way more complex. And if you don't get it right, you didn't get it right. Even if you have a dam there, you might have screwed up bad. And so, like, when you have a show like that and you bring that on, you need someone else. And so I'm like, and this is 100% true. I said, so I'd like to get a guy from a nation to come on. And he's like, well, but I said, I don't want to do the genuflect, like, I am Pete. I am a terrible person. I live on, this kind of, and he's like, then you probably can't have a nation guy on because they're all like trained to have that conversation. And if you don't have it, we'll get stuck. And I'm like, well, how do we account for the nation side? He's like, let me think about that. And let me see if I can find a person who can just have a candid, because I don't want to put things in front of the conversation.
Hmm.
So we're trying to figure out how to have that conversation, even right. And so, but that third person creates an interesting whirlpool in the chat, and it's my job to either play a role, like I'll play the angry guy, or I'll play this person, or I'll just get out of the way. And
Yeah.
it's a really neat opportunity as a host to guide a conversation that you're not in control of. It's really fascinating. I think you'll enjoy it. The other thing I
I need
do is
to.
I'll grab my kit and I'll go to someone's house whenever possible and do it live at their location.
See, I'd love to do that, but I live in like rural Oklahoma.
Yeah, yeah,
So, um,
yeah,
I just don't think I can do that. I think I'm going to try to expand a little bit more in the next like year or two,
yeah.
and see if I can't get at least some more prominent Oklahomans. We have some
Sure.
celebrities here, and we have some
Yeah.
big entrepreneurs, and the film industry's taken off. So I've got my eyes on some big bogeys there. I don't know if I'll
How
be able
far are
to
you
do it in
from
person.
Tulsa?
2 hours,
Yeah, you can go get Ree at the Mercantile. That lady's super famous. I bet she'd sit with you.
probably. Yeah, yeah.
You
So
know?
I need to expand a little bit more, and as I approach that 100 episode mark, I'm like, okay, I'm either
Yeah,
gonna invest in this a little further, or I'm gonna shut it down. One or the other,
yeah,
but I'm not going to half-ass it. That's for sure.
yeah.
So
Well, let me know when you're thinking about a road kit, and I'll help you figure out what to do.
yeah, it'd be great. Let's let's talk a little bit more about your big projects. So you got the podcast, but you're doing other
Yeah,
big things too, becoming more of that
yeah.
real executive producer. What's that about?
Well, so like when people are like, well, how do you monetize? Like, do you sell books? Do you sell courses? And I'm like, I thought about and kind of half started those things, but my heart was never in those things. But what has turned out that my heart is in is taking all these amazing guests that I get, and when I realize there's traction there, it looks like I can reliably get these things started down the road of becoming like a documentary, or if it's not a book and possibly a documentary. And so getting, because I know authors, surprise, surprise, and so it's like, well, let's turn this into a book. Do you have, or can you raise this much money? We'll get the book written. Let's get that done. And is this marketable? That kind of thing. But yeah, this documentary piece is really fascinating because the market loves documentaries right now, and maybe that won't be the case 5 years from now, too. Who knows? But for right now, um, documentaries are marketable, and so you go out, you take these ideas, and I have the knack of saying, I think there's something here. I can take it to people that I've met along the way, and they go, Pete, there is a project here. I think this is how we raise money, and I go, oh, ooh, this is also how we raise money. And then these are just meetings now. We're just talking about like we have these pieces, we think these go together pretty easily. Let's pursue this and go further. And you get to the next step and you're like, hey, these pieces have all gone together so far. We should take it to the next step. And then all of a sudden you're 5 steps into a 800 piece process, but those pieces all of a sudden start self-locking because you are now in production, right? And so a lot of ideas can't get to that point. And so it's like when money becomes automatic, where you're like, oh, okay, can we raise this money? Well, we have these 4 different avenues, and we think one of the 4 are a good enough bet that we can go for it. All of a sudden, you become a producer, and that's where I'm at right now. So I've got a number of projects in pre-production in varying stages of that early process, and hopefully within the next year, a couple of these things I will have pushed them off into the production side, and that's where I kind of lose like the direct day-to-day things, and I'll just keep working on the pre-production side and trying to get these babies swatted on the button off into the production side of things, and hopefully they'll start to develop and appear onto the small screen somewhere.
Any teasers you can give us behind what you're working on or content wise?
Uh, yeah, I mean a little bit of teasing. There's some stuff that's focused on Ukraine that might happen. There's some stuff that, if things break our way, which they have until recently, there's a pretty big project that's going to focus on foreign policy. There's just some of the stuff that I'm working on with my nonprofit that I've started. Just like, hey, we screwed up. Would you like to see what that looks like, so we can all learn and we can all stop screwing up as much? That's stuff like that. Really, really interesting things that we're like, we'll take the cameras and go, this is what screwing up looks like, and we need to stop. You know,
Yeah.
um, and then there's some sports stories that are just great, and they're exciting, and I think that there's stuff that if I mentioned them too directly, that'd be out of bounds. But there's
Sure.
sports things that everybody's going to be like, "Man, that was cool." And so they're just a variety of things out there. And there's, because of what I do at the podcast, there are just so many of them, and I'm like, how do I control my urge to have too many projects? I've got to really neck down, which is against my. This is a skill I've had to develop. I have to like resist the urge to say yes, 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 and I have to like, no, no, I can only work on these things, and I can push them along. And then when they get stuck, maybe I say yes to something else, but really I've got to focus on these things. And, one of the attributes of an executive producer is the ability to clear a logjam,
Hmm.
and that's one of my things. I'm like, oh man, this thing is stuck. What does it need? And so I try to figure those things out. So that's it. And I can't believe I'm actually saying those words, but that is what it appears that I have become, is the person who makes, among other things, documentaries.
So how do you balance everything you have going on? The podcast, you said all these, these documentaries, these projects, and then you have the
Yeah,
Ground Truth Center, which we're going to talk about here shortly, and your
yeah.
nonprofits. How do you balance all that? What's the secret sauce?
Not well, not well.
I appreciate the honesty.
Yeah, no, come on. I mean, I fall behind. I don't deliver at the rate that I need to. I mean, I'm just being 100% honest on that. I got up early today to do some work on the Ground Truth Center so that the website was up again because I had pulled it down to do some work on it, and it's not as good as I need it to be. And frankly, it's a stupid website. Like it only needs to be so good, but you have to always kind of knock the dents out of it, right? And all of the arrows lead back to this guy. So even if I'm like, hey, the email is just email me at pete@breakitdownshare.com, because guess where the Pete at Ground Truth Center email is going to go? Is it right back into me because I'm the main guy, right? And I've got guys that help me, but really it's my job to continue to put the energy and to clear the log jams. So how do I manage it? Well, one of the things you already heard me admit to this, the podcast suffers because it doesn't generate enough revenue to warrant my full attention, and so I don't go get Ice Cube. Could I get Ice Cube? Yeah, probably. And maybe
That'd be
not.
cool.
When Ice Cube was talking a lot, I probably could have got him. I missed that opportunity, but my show is such that I could have a chance of getting him. I still get great people all the time, but I'm a little more passive about that. That passivity is me saying, "Hey, I'm not going to spend time and money on chasing huge things. I'm going to put that money into developing these, documentary projects." And then I don't do shorts as much as I need to. All right, I'm going to sit down every day and I'm going to spend an hour doing shorts. Some days I don't get to that,
Hmm.
and so I try to budget my time in that way. And I try to sit down and do it. I didn't do my short time this morning because guess what I was doing? I was fixing the Ground Truth Center website, and so that's how I balance it. Is I just take on little bits at a time. I talk on the phone to people all the time. We were going to have a conference, and some of the funding fell through or was delayed, and so we canceled that. But we're still going to publish this book, and so all these different things take my attention and my guidance and my energy. And so I stay busy and I go, who do I need to talk to today? What do I need to work on? And that's just like the professional stuff, right? Then I got to manage my own VA care. I don't know how yours is, but I'm always having to spend time on that. Like I've got to go call the community care people this week and beat them up for not calling me back last week,
Yeah.
and so that means two people are going to get a pop in the eye on Monday. And I mean it. And anybody who deals with the VA knows, like, you got to come in, you got to start rapping people on the beak. Be like, hey, man, I called you twice last week. Nobody called me back. Do I need to get nasty? Because
Yeah.
I will. And so that takes time and effort. And then sometimes I really got to calm myself down because I got a pretty significant case of PTSD. And yeah, so that's how I manage it. Just ugly,
Yeah.
nasty, hard work.
I'm very fortunate that they built a new clinic, VA clinic here. And they built it in this building that's right across the hall from my wife's dermatology clinic. So they have a good relationship now, and they know me, and they seem to have employed some pretty good people because
Yeah.
sometimes I have to beat them off with a stick and be like, just okay, I got the message. I have my appointment. I get it. You know, like
Yeah. Yeah.
so I'm very fortunate that my clinic here locally seems to have their stuff together because I know there's
Yeah.
plenty of places that absolutely do not.
Yeah,
And
I should
beforehand, they
say
didn't have it
my
together.
stuff is Orange County is very complex and massive, and there are so many wonderful people, and it is very hard. But sometimes you do have to pull the elbows out and get cracking.
Hmm.
And so, I am noting that there are wonderful people, and they do a lot of amazing work. It's
They
just
do.
it requires a lot of work to hold your end of the bargain up. So,
Well,
it
and
is a
then
balancing act.
government bureaucracy and budgets, and
Yeah,
it's like just having a clinic open to help take care of veterans and give them the the support and the benefits that they are owed, that they've been
right.
promised and told that they could have,
Yeah,
is a chore alone. And then you say, oh,
right.
by the way, it's all going to be backed by the government, which is the most dysfunctional organization on planet Earth, is the United
Yeah,
States
yeah.
government.
I love when
So
they look at the bill and they're like, wait a second, this is kind of expensive. And you're like, well, shouldn't have gone to war.
you think,
Yeah.
you think, yeah, it's got the second and third order effects that are going to be seen for
Yeah. Yeah.
decades,
Yeah.
decades, and they just
Yeah.
I don't know, they don't get it. Well,
Yeah.
let's move into the Ground Truth Center. Tell me
Okay.
a little bit more about the nonprofit. Why just start it? What's its mission?
So, a buddy of mine, a lot of our PTSD, and this is common for a lot of us guys, is, it comes from um, like the promises that we have to go out into the field and make, right? And so we go meet with the sheikh, we meet with the government official, we meet with the colonel that we're going to go partner with, or we're going to help someone partner with, and then with all of our best intention, we're working hard trying to build relationships and everything else, and then it turns out we're just flat out lying to these people. And there's been too many times where I've had to be the one that goes, hey man, we're leaving. And the guy's like, yes, yes, I know. Yes. Someday you will leave. And I'm like, not someday, 8 days from now. And they're like, what are you talking about? They get real clear. And I'm like, I swear to God, we're leaving. We're never coming back. I mean, I will be here. I am not leaving, but I'm not ever coming back here. Nobody is. We are not going to be in this region anymore. And then I'm like, what do you need to survive here as a governor? And the governor, this is 100% happened. He's like, well, they're going to kill me. And I'm like, I can't help you with that. What can I help you with? And then they make a list and we can't fulfill it because we haven't prepared these partners for our departure. We've lied to them. We have not prepared for transition. We're only worried about our own safety. And I straight up, they smoked that guy shortly
Wow.
after we pulled out of that area, right? So who owns that? Who owns that soul? Who owns that grave? Me. I get to own that person. And so there are too many people like that we have turned our backs on. All the women in Afghanistan were like, you get to have rights. You get to go to school. Bye. And we leave, right? All of that is wrong. You don't get to do that. You don't get to change your mind. You don't get to half ass all of this important stuff. Like if you're going to go and make these foreign policy calls, if you're going to write legislation, if you're going to spend money and have theories about what needs to happen, you got to damn well take it serious. And so there's a missing piece of like principled behavior by the ambassadors, by the legislators, by the theoreticians, the people, the academics that's missing. And so I'm saying, my buddy John and I are saying, all of my field practitioner friends are saying, it's on us to close that gap and go, hey, theoretician, hey, academic, hey, legislator, when you make these promises, when you make these jumps, you have to understand people are going to go out and try to do that. If they're not trained, if they're not professional in that skill, you're not going to get the outcome you want reliably. And so the example I've been using is like you live in a Ptolemaic galaxy or solar system world where you think the Earth is the U.S. is the center of everything. But I'm telling you, it's not. And you're going to be like, you're crazy. We're going to kill you. Because I've been killed. I've been kicked off of camps. I've had commanders be like, get out, get Turner off, but get him out of country, right? I'm like, I'm just telling you the truth. I'm just
Yeah.
telling you the truth. I've got bad
Get ready
news. You don't
for it.
like it, but it's not changing anything, right? And so when you send the James Webb telescope up and you're like, the whole world, the whole universe is different than you ever thought, that's ground truth. Like, it doesn't matter what you believe, it matters what actually is like out there. Even if it's not the reality of the reality, that is their reality out there. And so, like, here's a great example. In the part of Iraq I was in, there was a place called Tuatha, and they have a nuclear plant that got blown up a long time ago. And if you ask them, they'll say the Iranians blew it up. The reality is the Israelis did. And you can say, no, no, the Israelis blew that up. And they're like, no, the Iranians did. You can tell them all you want the Israelis blew it up. They'll never believe that. And so the ground truth is the Iranians did. And there's no point in changing their mind because that is their mind. And it won't matter anyhow because the thing is still blown up. And so how do you deal with that reality? How do you accomplish your mission given that reality? And so it doesn't matter what your commander wants. It doesn't matter what your commander's goal is. It matters what is possible given the reality of where they're at on the ground there. And that's what we try to close that gap up so that the understanding of if you have an infantry lieutenant and they've got 27 jobs that have nothing to do with platoon and the defense, and nobody's trained for these jobs, you can't expect them to do them professionally. And so you say, hey, you've got to go out and do all of these things and do economy of force. Don't patrol too far, and everything else. That's unrealistic. That's unrealistic. There's no roads. We're not going to come help you. Don't get too far out, LT, because there's not going to be any help coming. Make sure that you also establish governance. Oh, what? What?
Yeah.
You
How am
know?
I supposed to do all that?
Yeah, and Sergeant Sanchez, that pig, that M60 you got, I know it's deadline. You have to carry that around. Don't shoot anybody with it. It doesn't shoot anybody anyhow, sir. It's obsolete and shouldn't even be in the unit. Yeah, but don't shoot anybody with it. Like you're got all these things that are like mixed messages.
Yeah,
Like, why am I carrying an M60 if it's broken in this combat zone anyhow? If I can't even shoot it, even if it could shoot anybody,
yeah.
and establish governance.
Because there's a policy out there that says every mission will have an M60 on it.
Yeah,
Like I know,
right.
I've been there before too
Yeah,
in the Air Force. Like, why are we doing this? I'm like, well, because it's the policy says we have to. And they go,
right.
well, we don't.
Yeah.
We don't need this right now. Well, policy says that everyone will go out and do this.
Yes.
Every med kit will have this in it. Well, we're sending it to a place that doesn't have this in it.
Yeah.
Like there's no need.
Yeah.
This is added weight that an operator or an
Right.
airplane does not want. I don't care if it's just a couple of ounces. That can matter, especially the
It
guys stuffing
matters.
it on backpacks. You know,
Yeah.
rucking
Yeah.
and all that their most expensive thing they have on them is their boots and their gun, and you're going to
Oh
add
yeah.
a couple extra ounces to them, like it's because it's policy. And the thing that makes me mad about policy, and not to get on my soapbox, but the policy half the time is not for the benefit of the individual. It's to check the
No.
box to cover the ass of the bureaucrat or the general sitting in the Pentagon
Right.
or the
Right.
Capitol.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
like the whole. I have a big beef with the whole like transition assistance program that we have in the military that is mandated by Congress. And that is if that's all you need to know about it is that it's mandated by Congress. And that's
Yeah.
absolute bullshit because
Yes.
it is 5 days of them checking the box, and nothing against the people who put this program on is because they have to. They're wonderful
Yeah.
people. I know some of
Right.
them here at my local base, and they're
Yes.
wonderful people. They have to do things to check the box because congressmen are tired of hearing about military members having problems transitioning. So they said, we'll come up with a program that they have to do, and that solves the problem. No,
Right.
it doesn't. It's 5 days of a massive waste of time of things
Yep.
that you think are important that are absolutely not. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
my TAP program that I did, well, I probably did it 6 years ago. It was 5 days a waste of my time. It was
Yeah.
probably 8 total hours, one full day of useful information.
Yeah.
Other than that, it was a total waste. And it's not it's not to the fault of the people putting it on. It's that they
Oh.
have to do 5 days of this crap because Congress
Yeah.
said so.
Yeah. It's just like when you go to the nonprofits that are there to help veterans find jobs. I live in Orange County, California, and so I walk in and I'm credentialed. I have things I've done, and they're like, "How many applications do you think you can fill out in a week?" And I'm like, "Applications? I don't plan to fill any of them out. I mean, I understand it's a part of the process, but I'm not looking for a job where you fill out an application. You get that, right? You're looking at my resume." And they're like, but they have to ask that question to everybody, and I'm like,
Yeah, and there's
look at my
quotas
resume.
and all that stuff.
Yeah, and then like, what do you think you need to make? And I'm like, well, again, I live in Orange County, so I don't know, 6 figures. And they're looking like I'm crazy, and I'm like, again, it's Orange County. The average income here is like
Yeah.
110 grand
Well,
a year. So
you live here too. Don't look at me like I'm crazy.
yeah,
You live here as
yeah,
well.
yeah. And again, look at my resume. I've got all this experience. I got a master's degree. I've advised all kinds of people. It's a long thing. So I don't mind like starting somewhere and not being like the king of France. I don't have a problem with that, but no one's going to hire me as an entry level person. I'm not going to drive a forklift because no one's going to hire me for that job either. And so they just like they get stuck, and I'm like, you guys can't help me. It's okay to say it, and they won't say it. I'm like, I'll ask them, like, it's okay to say that you can't help me. No, 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 we can help everybody. And I'm like, all I need you guys to do is open doors and get me interviews with people. I get that these jobs, a lot of these jobs are not for me at my qualification level. I get that,
Yeah.
but I can identify a place I want to work. Just get me the interview in the door so I can go talk to the CEO or the whoever it is, and I'll talk to them, and then they'll either want me or they won't. And they won't ever do that, and they won't ever say I can't help you. And so yeah, you get stuck, and you're like, huh. And so then you become not valuable, invisible, and then you become crazy, and you're like, I can't make any money, and so you do have problems. And so that's sort of this ground truth thing is like, how do you inform people who are desperate to be informed? How do you take someone who went to Georgetown and got an international relations PhD and say to them, you have no idea how hard it is to do what you're about to do. Can I help you? And then when they say no, then you look at the ambassador and he goes, you know what? That guy's not on my project anymore. Let me get someone else. And that's what you're looking for, is that connection between the diplomat, the person who's like, I want to get things right. That commander that's like, I want to know the ground truth. That general, because I'd watch generals come in and they would like, roar, I know what's going on here. And I'm like, this guy is obsolete. He has no idea he's talking about because he's not been informed at the ground level. That's what we're trying to close that gap so that there are people that can be reached out to before we make the mistakes, before we make the policy and say, hey, who's our ground truth person who can help us understand it? And I'll say this, then I'm going to shut up. One of the things we all learn pre-combat in like our language training, which is really inadequate because we're all desperate to develop some kind of language capacity in a ridiculous amount of time. The first or second phrase is we learn how to say the words, do you speak English in the foreign language? And I always raise my hand and I say, don't you just say, do you speak English? Because if they do, they'll go, yes. And instead, you learn like you'll say, to speak the English or something, whatever it's going to be, and then they'll say yes. So why even learn that phrase? Like that little beat, that little 15-minute block of instruction, you can now do something else, right? But it's a waste of time, and you're never going to say that. And by the way, learn how to work with an interpreter instead at the professional level. Like develop real professional capacity so that no matter where you go, when they give you an interpreter, no matter who it is, where they're from, you can say, I am a damn pro. I got a badge that says I know how to work with interpreters. I know how to build trust, and I can go anywhere in the world, and within a short amount of time, I will be awesome with that, whoever that person is, and we will get the mission done.
So, what is kind of the future of the Ground Truth Center? I know you said you're working on a website, but what's kind of like the next step
Yeah.
in the evolution of it?
Well, I mean, apart from like funding and gathering ground truth people, and I mean like real serious people who've like been shot at, who've had the people fail around them and have seen these problems. Apart from those things, um, the idea I think is to start to connect into different parts of the government, wherever it is, and this can be casework. Like, hey, we're going to solve homelessness. Oh, okay, great. Well, let's get people who do casework and talk and like, you know. I had a guy on the show the other day, and he was talking about casework in New York for homeless people. And I said, "Well, what's the longitudinal success of these programs?" He's like, "Oh no, we don't do that. 6 months of it, we don't study it anymore." And I'm like, "Well, then what happens 6 months after that?" And he's like, "Well, they probably come back, but we don't study that." And I'm like, "Well, there you go. There's the problem right there. Like you have to understand, like, are you succeeding? Like having a 6 month success plan is great, but how do you know if it's working 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the line? And if it is, well, then give it to everybody because we'd all love to solve this problem. But I bet that people who are schizophrenic and on drugs to deal with their schizophrenia are not getting off the streets reliably. So that's sort of the plan, is to figure out how to bring this kind of knowledge in, get the caseworker, get the spy, get the people that have gone out and done this impossible work, and say, here is how you reduce errors in the policy and the design. Here's how you improve training. Good grief. Can we just have a person who's specifically focused on this one thing and make them professionally licensed in that one thing that you want to do, instead of just saying, hey, LT, uh, figure out how to do all these things, like attach that expertise to that person and then judge them on it. We used to have these, when we were in Afghanistan, we had these, yeah, like a major. They'd go to the PRT, the Provincial Reconstruction Team, and they would be responsible for any Taliban that wanted to come in and use the Welcome Back to Society package. And that major could sit there for the entire year, wear civilian clothes, and accomplish nothing. Never have one Taliban person ever come in and go, I want to be part of society. And that would be ACES, Great Tour. Well, that program is a failure. And so why even spend the money? Why send the people there? Or how do you improve that program? But instead of doing that, we just allowed that failure just to repeat and repeat and repeat and
Yeah.
repeat. And we probably, I bet if you went and looked at the documents, it's always like great program, great success, great, 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 great. Meanwhile, the actual reality is we probably brought zero people,
Yeah.
two
Not
people,
looking at the
maybe.
numbers and asking
Right,
why. Why is this broken? Why isn't it working? Nobody's interested.
right. Yeah. And what did it cost to do that? Way too much money, way too many tours. And so either don't do it or figure out how to do it right. But we'll lie to ourselves and tell ourselves that it worked great when it clearly didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a huge problem in government ops. a lot is the answers are often there. There's issues here at my local base that we have solutions for, but we won't admit to ourselves that that's the solution. Um,
Right.
Larger commands won't admit that there's a solution there, and it boils down to a lot of things: policies, political relationships, political fallout.
Sure.
It goes down to hurt and feelings or making a hard decision, and I think it's gotten to a
Yeah.
point where they won't make they won't make a hard decision because they know it affects things, whether it affects future families or the future force and blah blah blah. They won't they won't make that decision because they're afraid to be labeled as a person who did it. And I'm like, well, listen, when you become a political leader, you become a military leader. Part of your job is making those very hard decisions that you know are for the better
Yeah.
of the force, but will not be fun to go over. It'll not be fun to work through, and you might make that decision today, and then everybody else has to deal with it tomorrow. But
That's right.
that is your job. Your
Yeah.
job, and the Secretary of the Air Force said this recently. He said, "It's our job to give America tomorrow's Air Force today." And that
Yeah.
means we might have to restructure. We might have to kill missions and add new ones. It might be a pain in the ass. It might be a lot of heartache for a bunch of
Yeah.
years. And the motto might be we're changing. And everybody hates
Yeah.
change. But you know what?
Yeah.
Change has to happen. The last time the Air Force restructured was like back in the early 90s when Strategic Air Command went away and they stood up Air Mobility Command and all these other commands. It was the 90s.
Yeah.
Look at the
Yeah.
conflict we've been through since then.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
mean to tell me that's the last time the Air Force is really restructured? Like we're in a different kind of conflict. And you
Yeah.
know this well because you've been out there in it. But
Yeah.
we haven't restructured. We haven't
Yeah.
retooled the force to
Yeah.
see
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
like you got to do that stuff and it's going to hurt. It's going to be painful. People are going to complain.
Sure.
You got to tune it out
Sure.
and say, we're pressing
Yeah.
forward. That's a hard thing for
Yeah.
people to do. It's easy for me to say. I can sit here and say it behind a microphone all day long,
Yeah.
but
And that's one of the things that is a challenge too. And we don't want to be a think tank. We don't want to be a place where we just say, everything sucks, because everything doesn't suck. We do a lot of things incredibly well, right?
yeah,
But when we have priorities that are out of whack, like I'm peer reviewed published on female engagement in conflict zones. And one of the things that I've learned from people who are actual pros at this stuff is you don't go do it. That's the bottom line. Unless you are specifically going to be a professional anthropologist and only thing you do is study that group of people for your career, you don't go mess around with it because you have no business doing that. It's inappropriate. It's inhumane. It's unethical. And so when you put that hard line in, bam, don't go mess with the women. Good ideas. Don't go invent the period. Don't go do any of it. It absolves you of making these unethical mistakes. You're like, hey, we're not going to go make that mistake. And it drives people crazy. And it's that bad news you're talking about. But unless you're willing to go out and really like take responsibility for causing harm, then and the thing is like I use this example because it's a good one. Mr. Beast recently made the news. Mr. Beast is this super successful YouTube guy. He went
yeah,
to Africa and drilled 100 wells. When you're in the development world and you talk about like the mistakes that are easily made, it's often around wells because wells are never as simple as we want them to be. If you go to the Arabic world, in the Arab world, the Islamic world, there is a dude whose job is water. It's just part of the deal. It's part of how the religion works. And if you don't know that, you shouldn't be digging wells, even if you've been invited, even if you're undermining the local government. You shouldn't do it. And water equals power. Things equal power. People are going to die. You bring fresh water into a place that doesn't have it, you're going to create wastewater. All of these things go into these problems. And if you're not going to stay, and a month later, Pete goes back and it's like, hey, how'd that well project go? And I go examine 30 of your 100 wells. You're not going to like the news because it's going to turn out that you did it wrong. It's really, really hard to go change a place, show up, fly in, drill holes, take video, look great, and then leave and then not be judged externally. Because I'll go in there and I'm going to go walk around and I'm going to be like, how many people have died from this project? And you're not going to like the news. It's going to be hard. And that's not a knock on Mr. Beast. We've all done. If it was easy to dig wells and bring fresh water to people,
we'd all do
there'd
it.
be no freshwater problem.
Yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Well, Pete, I've had you for about an hour now, man. It's been a pleasure. It's been great. It's blown by. Before I let you go, where can people go to find more about you, the Break It Down Show, Ground Truth Center, and all that?
Ground Truth Center website is groundtruthcenter.org. Nice and simple. If you have questions, if you want to ask me questions, Pete at breakitdownshow.com is the best place. YouTube, Pete A. Turner or Break It Down Show should come up. There's a whole lot of shows there. And Pete A. Turner on any kind of social media. I'm glad to talk to people. I'm not hard to get a hold of. I'm glad to run my mouth as much as you guys will let me. And thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on. Anybody,
Of
seriously,
course.
anybody has any questions, if you want to help or want to contribute or you are a ground truth person, let me know. And I would love to put you to work on doing things. And we want to be part of being better at this whole thing. We are not here to be like, you suck. That's not what we're trying to do. I know it sounds like that and sometimes feels like that. And I get excited like that. But really, I want to help us make more better informed decisions, increase our foreign policy accuracy. Like that's the most important thing. Prioritize better, waste less money, have less corruption, and just increase our accuracy. These are all goals that everybody should agree on, like are good goals. So that's it. That's my whole spiel. And thanks, Jeff, man. I appreciate you.